Thank you. I got a couple things I want to get into tonight because it's been a quite interesting week watching quite a few YouTube videos with one thing is to pay attention, like Prague University and all these things that are up there. Remember, they're not doing this for you. They're doing it for themselves. Prague University is run by the Jews. And they don't believe in they don't believe in freedom. They're trying to convince you to join them and to join their religious structure. They do have a religious structure on Prague University. I've done the research on this stuff. I watched the videos. And it is interesting because all they do is talk about their democracy. And that's what they mostly say, their democracy. And then sometimes they say it's our democracy. And the one thing is, folks, you got to wake up. There's no such thing as about democracy. We're a Republican form of government. If you want democracy, please go back to England. Because we don't want you here. Because democracy has destroyed this country. Democracy is what raped, robbed, and pillaged the Indians and the natives. And remember, there's not just Indians, they're called natives. We've had white, Chinese, color folks, Orientals, everybody on this soil. And then I always get these questions from people on the internet going, well, then you should go back to your country of your native origin. And it's like, it really disturbs me when you got these people that are that damn stupid. And yes, I'm calling them stupid. Because they don't want to educate themselves. They don't want to sit there and protect their children. They know that they're making a living off their children, and they don't care about their children. I've had conversations with several people over the last week on this issue, and it's interesting, very interesting, because they know what's going on, but then again, they're trying to justify their actions of what they have done, some of them, what they have done to their own children. All right, you can't justify it. You're supposed to make amends. That's the whole point. You're supposed to, reheal what you caused the damage for and then educate them along the way. And it's so disturbing when you watch this stuff that's going on around our country. We got the Democrats that are heavily attacking Trump, and I don't vote. I'm public on that. I'm not in the system. I've deregulated myself. I'm still working on totally deregulating my property, my soil, and I recommend everybody else do that. If you're a lawful bloodline native, 5 generations or more. And if you're 4 or less generations, write it up and protect your children so that way your bloodline stays alive. See, and it's been interesting because I have been watching, even Fox News had a little blip about the question, is the bloodline really true? And I saw that on Fox 3 days ago, and I thought that was just a little blip in one of the ladies that was talking on the show. And I was just impressed that, it is starting to get out. It is being recognized. And this is the one point is it's going to take a little longer for some other people to step in line with this, because if people don't step in line, there is no country. See, we've been invaded in this country going back to basically the 13th century. And people don't realize it, and they say, oh, we're a country of immigrants. No, we're a country that have been invaded, terrorized, and executed by the domestic and foreign terrorists that have come on this soil of the 48 states. Let's be honest about this. We are not a country of immigrants. That's why we have an immigration standard that they have to go through the process. I would like to see the immigration process go back to 50,000 people a year only. Period. End of story. I mean, with Obama bringing in 1 million to 2 million people a year for 8 straight years, and all those kids are having babies, and people are going, well, I was born on this soil, so I have rights. Sorry to say that. You got to read the Constitution, and you have to read the congressional records, and the Supreme Court decision says, no, you don't. And once you comprehend that, no, you don't have rights, you have privileges so long as you pay your taxes, your registration or licensing fees, your administrative costs. That's how our government stays a business and floats, by the foreigners paying this for the lawful bloodline natives. We already gave our lives and our ancestry that spilt so much blood on this soil protecting it, and we're still doing it today, and it's ridiculous. It's like we're looking at, if the word is correct that I got, we might look at 2 federal agencies totally shut down, gone. The budget will be eliminated. And that's what I'm hoping for. I do see, do see a revamp of children's CPS services coming up. And that's the one thing that I just suggested, and I'm getting some more into, at least to the Oregon State House. I'm talking federally what was brought up to me. But in the state of Oregon, Monday, I'm making some more calls. I have put in administrative bills for the upcoming Senate session. And this is the one thing that people got to realize. I mean, I was fortunate because I got an email from Secretary of State Dennis Richardson that says, hey, you want to be part of the process and write the bills? And I'm like, shit, great. I haven't done that in, 8 years, 10 years? So I'm really eager on this. So, and I'm glad that they're starting to listen because they're realizing what Kate Brown is bankrupting this country. She just put you in another debt for $2 billion. Now they're trying to pass a grocery tax in the state of Oregon. Now, I know people are mentally retarded because they go along with the public systems and go, no, we need to have this. We need a grocery tax because nobody. Hey, folks, look at the real history of the state of Oregon Territory, or Oregon State. The real terminology, not the corporation. We the people. We the people, by our contract with the British government, before it became a corporation, we are a no tax state. Period. End of story. So either you want to save your children or your bloodline, or if you don't start standing up. I mean, this is the point in movement right now. Trump has got a lot of things moving. There will be some surprise arrests coming up, which I've heard about. Of course, I would like to see a proof, because until I see proof, I'm not going to bring things up. But I'm bringing it up in this manner, so this way, if things do come down the way it was suggested to me, people won't be totally surprised to listen to us, because we are involved. We do educate you for your children, and that is the one thing that you have to realize. And realize that the corporation doesn't exist. Artificial corporation, and that's a district attorney, state attorney general, anybody who works for the government, cannot write an affidavit. Period. And it's questionable if they could write an affidavit off the clock, unless it's personally for them. Because when they write an affidavit or go to a jury trial or voting, they vote for themselves, for the corporation. And that is the one that I do recommend that I'm going to be putting in here by Wednesday. For all elected and public servants cannot be on a jury, period. We need to start standing up. We, the people, need to get off our damn ass and stop doing this crap of following the sheep over the cliff. And once we start waking up and start doing this, I've been watching quite a bit that's been changing here. There's a lot of things that have been going on behind the closed doors. And if you've been watching how there's been several more dozen judges that have been arrested for human trafficking, that's dealing with strictly, most of those cases are dealing with CPS for kidnapping children for personal financial gain. I talked to several people, and I'm trying to get them to comprehend that they have to file the criminal charges. And they're going, the district attorney, that's their job. And I'm going, no, it is not their job until you file the affidavit. You have to instruct the state attorney general what to do. And once the general public starts comprehending that they are the employer, not the slave, we can start getting a whole bunch more change and a lot more producing. But that's the point, that people have got to start comprehending the separation of church and state. Your religion does not give you rights, period, end of story. It's like I've talked to a few more people, we'll let God deal with it. And I tell them, well, all right, when you meet God, tell him to come to me. I'm waiting on him. Because I haven't seen proof about that at all, period, across the country. You know, when God shows up, hey, then I'll jump for joy. But until God shows up, hey, what do I know? So this is the one thing that we've got to start protecting the children and yourselves, your bloodline. If you own property, start filing on it. Don't forget you need to file and go back to the original plat maps from the Bureau of Land Management. Now, I've talked to people that are trying to get disband Bureau of Land Management, but let me tell you something. For those uneducated, unintelligent men and women, you disband Bureau of Land Management, you're not going to be able to own land. It's going to be owned by the corporation, your state, and you don't have the right to be on your land, period. So that way they can take eminent domain on you and totally run your life. And that's a fact. That's not a joke. That's what they want to do. Remember, your elected and public employees don't believe that you have rights. They believe that you're privileged personnel just like they are. So once you start realizing this, and more are realizing it, I've been paying attention to what's been going on the internet, what's been going on in some of the news media, especially Alex Jones at the federal Washington, D.C., because they totally just trying to get him totally out. You know, and I'm not against Alex Jones at all. I mean, the one thing is, he has just as much right as you and I do. And these damn Democrats are going after you and I to shut us up. And once you realize that these organizations like Prague University, and you've got all these Democrat corporations out there, remember colleges and high schools and corporation universities, they get federal funding and your tax dollars. So they don't care about you. Once you wake up and start comprehending that these employees, and everybody goes, well, these employees are nice. We need to save their jobs. We need to do bullshit. They are just as guilty as the king and queen that's running that corporation. That's a reality fact that people, you've got to come to reality and truth. Because, go ahead. Well, that is correct, but you've got to realize we're still trying to wake up the uneducated because they're still programmed. Go ahead. Oh no, you're correct because I haven't finished up yet, and I was going to get to that point too. But see, everybody thinks that they pay this stuff. It's like court fees. You pay the court fees. That court fees goes into the retirement fund for the judicial department. See, this is where I've been going after to try to explain to people you got to track the money. That's why Walter Bruin, Capital One, and if you don't know about Walter Bruin, I believe we do have it up on new.org and trackers, and I'll get a post up on all the YouTube channels again. The Recall Cape Brown, the New Oregon Trackers, United States for Elected and Public Employees Oversights, and the Civil War Lawful Bloodline 1866. So once you start realizing that these corporations are pocketing your money that technically is supposed to go to you, personally, if you're a lawful bloodline native, immigration are not entitled to the funds of the Bankruptcy Act of 192. And that is partly in congressional records, and Dave Lee Buse and I wrote up an affidavit, put it in. We served at the Supreme Court to Congress. That was 6 years ago. And we got one reply back from one congressman and said, you know, you got a point. We never looked at it that way. And so, okay, great. They're slowly getting it. Some of these guys are slowly getting it. You are watching congressmen, including some of the old dogs that are changing their direction in their statements. If you've been paying attention to the mainstream media, they're starting to pay attention because they're realizing if they don't start making amends, they're going to jail. Trump made that very clear to Congress. And so if you're not following some of the stuff that's going on with Trump, then And everybody's going, well, we got to get rid of Trump. They're trying to get rid of Trump because they want to bankrupt your home. They want to steal your home. They don't want you to have rights in this country. It's like dealing with the right of travel. We do have a right to travel, but immigration has the privilege to travel. And I've written that affidavit up, and that's in the state of Oregon. I will be sending a revised copy to Senator Kim Thatcher, because I've talked to her over the years about doing a traveler's card, not an ID card. Big, legal, and lawful difference of wording. And that's the one thing that people have to comprehend. I do not have a problem with a traveler's card, because that way we get to know, and the public servants who enforce statute codes and administrative rules get to know who's lawful bloodline Native Americans in this country on the 48 soils. Because remember, Alaska, Hawaii are not part of the United States. They are corporations. And even at the United States bought Alaska from Russia, we still own it. But it's still no man's land, technically. And that was a structure before it was even bought, even before Russia even claimed Alaska. It was considered in all the old maps, and I'm talking old maps that I read going back and what I've seen going back even to the 1700s, where Alaska was classified as no man's land because it was inhabitable to live there because of the climate and the terrain. And that's what they had listed going back in the late 1700s. So this is the one thing that is apparent once you sit down and you start reading all this stuff. You know, and then the one thing is I miss being up at the Capitol. I miss going over to the historical library across the street over there, because I used to sit over there for, you know, an hour or two and go through records. And then it got to the point where some of the employees got changed over there, and then all of a sudden I started being told, well, you shouldn't be here. And so I was being attacked, and that started with about 5 years ago with the Cape Brown movement before it got to where it is today. And that's one thing. So I've been fighting and arguing with Cape Brown since 2005, and actually it started in 2003 when they passed the administrative rule to get rid of the local school committees in the Oregon Territory. Once they did that, the school committees in your schools have no rights, period. And your children go in that school, they can be taken out of that school and shipped across the country, and they don't have to tell you a damn thing. And once you realize that, people are waking up on that one. The kids have been that's happened to a couple of kids even recently. And the other recent news in the state of Oregon, there's been 36 men that have been arrested, or not arrested yet, but they were told to forfeit their arms or else they're going to be arrested because they have questionable things about them. And that is the new gun control bill that Kate Brown passed a year and a half ago, that everybody says, oh, don't worry about it, it ain't going to affect you. Bullshit. I know how stupid people are. And I mean stupid. Because when a public employee tells you, oh, that don't affect you, the minute one of them tells you that, you better start researching, and you got to realize that that's going to affect you, your children, and your family around you. So this is what it gets to me about how people don't pay attention to the reality of the real world. They live in this fantasy world of, no offense, religion, statute codes, and Disney, and cartoons and stuff. So you're not living in the real world. There are so many people do not live in the real world. That's the problem we are really having today. And that's the saddest part we got going on today. Now, tomorrow night, we're going to get into the Sixth Amendment, because that ties back into the First, Second, Third, Fourth, and most of all, the Fifth Amendment. And so I got some interesting news on that one, so we'll get into that tomorrow night. And I got a couple of things that might shock people what has turned up, so we'll get into that tomorrow night. But on tonight, on the educating on what's going on in your communities across the 48 states, you know, I do know that people are using and still researching what I sent them on Own Your Children. I have talked to many people over that the last week, too, and people are comprehending that. I've sent that out to about 100 people that I got responses for that wanted it, so that way they can look at it. or whatever they're going to do, because they're adults. And remember, we are not lawyers. We are not attorneys. You know, we are here to help educate you on the stuff and the research that, you know, we've done, because nobody else does it. And so we're bringing it to you because we don't want you to get caught up in the democracy lie and living hell that is being portrayed to the general public. And I'm talking lawful bloodline natives as well as legal immigrants. And I mean, I don't have a problem with legal immigrants so long as you do it properly. You know, there is no amnesty. And that is what was even proven recently in the Supreme Court, if you actually read the decision compared to what democracy is trying to tell some people. And there is no amnesty. And that goes back to the Immigration Act with Thomas Jefferson when they formed the Marines and the Navy. And so it is very, very apparent and important to read this stuff for what the words mean. Do not interpret. Because when you start interpreting things, you're doing it like an attorney or basically a crook, because they have to interpret things so they can make an income. And that is the saddest part in this country right now today. We ship so much of our assets out of the country, and that is including by the private jails. Because remember, your jails are not publicly owned, and the only ones that are is the federal government. All your other ones are not federally owned. They are locally owned by attorneys, local businesses, judges, people in the legal department. Oh, can't forget the number one problem we have, probation officers. And that's the one thing that people need to question their probation too. Unless you've harmed somebody. Personal and property damage, hey, sorry. You have to make your amends. We all been there sometimes. I haven't been there, but I know people have been there. And it's your responsibility to make those amends. Not the general public. Not at our expense. So once you start making amends and start getting back on the right track, we can save so much of this country. And that is the one thing that the whole point is to save this country. And people go, well, what about the other countries? So wake up, folks. It's not our responsibility to wake up and save the other countries. Once we do it for our country first, the other countries will wake up and follow through. So people got to realize the power of men and women. You know, they do have to realize the real power of men and women. And most people don't even get that point. They don't comprehend the power of man and woman or the people. They just don't get it. And you've seen it. We've seen the changes across the country on these things. And that's what we need to keep going on, is the power of the man and woman. Because that's the only way we're going to get changes. We saw that in Trump's election. And I watch people all the time, and I've had many hard arguments with people on Facebook the last week about Hillary Clinton. And then I sent them the stuff, the contract of what Hillary signed with the Queen of England, and they're going, oh, that can't be real. That's not true. And it's like, people, it is true. You know, when Hillary Clinton tried to convince you it takes a village to raise a child, that means it takes the way that the village raises your child. That's called a Commonwealth state. In a Commonwealth state, you have no rights. Because in a Commonwealth state, all your assets belong to the corporation, the state employees, not you. You know, your TV set, your jewelry, don't belong to you. Once you start accepting how the system really works compared to what we've been indoctrinized or lied to, or we're continuing to even lie to the children on this stuff. Once we stop lying to the children and we get proper education, it's like the one thing in the state of Oregon, they're supposed to start teaching the Constitution in 2020. So if you live in Oregon, make sure you write your legislators and instruct them to do their job and put what we need to teach the children in that Constitution development. The rights to travel, subsistence fishing and hunting, you know, going on even private property, going to hunt and fish, going up to the owners and showing respect to the owners. And that's the major problem, showing respect to the owners. You know, I'm going to go hunting on your property. And if you do get successful, or if you fish and you get plenty of fish, don't forget to throw a couple or some meat to the man or woman when you leave. Because, I mean, they gave you the rights to feed yourself. So show them with a little respect and courtesy back. And that's the one thing a lot of people have forgotten in this country, respect and courtesy. And so once we get respect and courtesy back, we're going to have a lot, we can start going and doing a lot more. Children won't be as screwed up as they are today. I mean, it's like I was talking to a couple people this week, and they're starting to open up their eyes, and they're just really recently doing that. And it's like, well, shit, all I did is play video games. You know, we didn't do anything but we played video games in the 90s and 2000s. So, and that's the one thing that is not shocking, but when you play video games, you don't sit there and pay attention to what's going on because you're closed-minded, literally closed-minded. So it takes a while for the mind to open back up, and some of these people are realizing it after they've been kidnapped and held for ransom and want to come up with a solution to their problems with their kids. So it is apparent that I do suggest that people do read what we have up on the website dealing with Own Your Children, because you have to own your property. Because the one thing is that if you leave your property vacant for 30 days after it's born, not birth, because it's not a ship, and they convince you it is a ship, so that way they can take ownership of it after 30 days after abandonment. And that's what you do when a woman has a child. They abandon the child when they're registered at the state. They're giving all authority to the state corporation to take their children, to do what they want with them. You know, and we know how the state, especially the state of Oregon, that I personally confirm and can verify, makes pornographic movies of children. I've been involved in court cases on it. We've even had testimony back in 2001 from cases that were pending, and the Gastons won a $500 million lawsuit against CPS, the state, for making a pornographic movie of their 5-year-old child. So when they say this shit doesn't happen, or it's just a fluke and there's just a few that happen, don't believe these terrorists, because it's not a few. You know, once you become a certain age, you start realizing this stuff. Especially after you grow up, because most of us, when we grew up, most of us played doctor. Most of us played those type of kid games. But that was done with kids. Nobody got hurt. It was an educational experience for kids growing up. So, you know, and then when you do that and you attack kids for learning, you know, that's the problem we have. Kids get attacked all the time, even for learning, education process. So how are people supposed to protect their children? That's your responsibility. Learn statute, codes, and administrative rules. Learn the Constitution. Learn what it says about the 14th Amendment. It was never passed. It was never ratified. It was passed by Congress. So it's a statute, code, administrative rule, but they had to do something because of flex of immigration. That's why Ellis Island was installed in place. So we knew who was coming into this country to record it. Because prior to that, people just came in this country. And, you know, we have a right to know who's coming in this country. The lawful bloodline natives. That's why we have a government employees, state and federal, city and county. There are employees. Their job is to protect us from terrorists. And that's the one thing that people need to comprehend, that reality. So once we start standing up to the corruption that we have allowed to happen, and yes, we have allowed it to happen, because I know a lot of people that turn their back and, you know, don't deal with it, and then when something happens to their children or them, they're on the doorstep, not only to me, but a lot of other men and women out there who assist and help people with education and this type of stuff, and we all know it. So they're on the doorstep, you know, hey, help us. And it's like I was talking to a gentleman yesterday. He's getting to the point where he's tired of helping people because nobody's helping him back. You know, everybody wants something for free, but nobody wants to help their neighbor. And that is the saddest part we are really living today. You know, when you get assistance or help from somebody and you win your case and it works, give back to the men and women that help you. Come on. You know, I don't want to hear that I'm poor and broke. I've been there. I'm poor, I'm broke, I'm on disability. But seeing that I can't physically do stuff or financially do stuff, there's other ways I do stuff to help people back. That's called, in a sense, called barter. That's what our country was founded on. because you got to realize, realistically, until even the 1910s, cities and counties, well, cities, but mostly the counties and the outlying areas, not everybody had money or dealt with money. See, money is a real new structure with the Federal Reserve and all that. Because most people, when they own their land, they lived literally off the land. Or they bartered, you know, their skins, their pelts, their labor with their neighbors. And we forgot how to do that in this country. We forgot what the foundation of this country really is. It is not money. It is saving each other, working with one another. And once we continue working with one another, we'll see more and more changes. Because I'm waiting, like everybody else, for Hillary Clinton to be arrested and a lot of other things. Now, if you've been paying attention, there's been a lot of public employees across the country, and there's been a few in the Senate that have just resigned. We're going to see probably a lot more of that coming down the pike. Now, there was another senator, I'm not too sure, I think it came out, but instead of being arrested on the charges, he basically committed suicide. And so that was his out, because he knew that if he would have went to court, he would have ended up in jail or prison. Jail and prison technically are the same thing, but remember, your local courts, your local jails are publicly funded by the judges, attorneys. They own them. They're certificately bonded. They're copyrighted. And that's the other point, that your state, county, and city ordinance and statutes are copyrighted, so they own that. I've had many people go off on me, Ed, you can't use that stuff. You can go to jail for using their stuff. It's a copyright. No, you can't under public law. Read public laws. And I quote that stuff because they wrote it. We quote it. We have a right to quote their administrative rules back to them, because those administrative rules is what they have to legally and lawfully follow, not we the people. You know, unless you do rape, rob, and murder and cause somebody property damage. Absolutely. And I don't believe in forgiving people for a lot of that stuff, you know. I believe that those men and women shall make an amends to the injured man or woman or even child. The one thing that I am working on, a bill for Congress, is dealing with human trafficking. If the case wins federally, that and we'll have that done, submitted here by, I think, the weekend. We have recommended, and I'm working with some interesting men and women on that one, has been recommended that once the public servant has been convicted of the crime, 100% of their assets, their land, their property, everything that they own, 10% goes to the system. 90% goes right back to the injured man, woman, or child. 90%. We got to, let them have a little bit. But then that way, that's part of the amends being made. That's part of protecting each other. And once we start doing that, and that's the one thing I am putting in and recommending in the state of Oregon, and if you agree with that, please recommend that to the Senate and House. I really ask people to do that, because if we can start getting it so it doesn't go to the lawyers, it does not go to the attorneys, it doesn't go to the judges, it doesn't go to the retirements of public servants, and it actually goes to the injured man, woman, or child personally. Because, I mean, the lawsuits that go on is a little bit redundant sometimes, because all it does is creating further debt. Yeah, and see, that's the one thing. And then class action lawsuits, once they will win, the lawyers get to decide who's getting a cut of it, unless you personally file and claim it. When you do a deal for an attorney on one thing, it's like Monsanto's has got a lawsuit. It looks like it's going to be going through. So I do recommend people pay attention to that one, because Monsanto's has already lost one lawsuit. 3 countries have thrown out Monsanto's out of their country 100%. And if they try to bring anything back, they are told that they'll be basically executed. So you got to realize that people are waking up. It's better late than never when it comes down to it. But that's the major part, is now it's waking up, because the only reason why it's woke up so rapidly and so fast is because we, the people, are out there doing this stuff. We, the people, are making these things happening. And see, that is the beauty about standing up for our rights. It is a reality, and it is happening. And so when we start doing this stuff, it's going to happen. And it takes you, the people, to make it happen. And once you start realizing that it is working and these things are happening, and it is a reality more than you think it is, that is the one thing that it comes down to: how are you going to protect your family? How are you going to protect our country? And it is our country, and including when the legal immigrations come in, they're claiming they want to be having our country, not religion. See, that's the one thing that is, people keep going, oh, we need to have religion. We don't want religion. That's why they wrote separation. Okay, fine. Okay, for those who want religion, keep it in your home. Keep it with you. We don't want it. There's a lot of us, like me, I don't believe in religion. And I believe my religion is the Constitution. The Constitution is my religion. Because, that's what I believe in. That's what gives me freedom. That's what gives you freedom. That's what gives legal immigrations freedom until they become lawful bloodline natives. And so because of the circumstances that we are working to preserve this, so that way our children have a future. And I do recommend collecting rainwater. I watched the video, and I was trying to get a hold of a couple people that put this up, and they're trying to tell, well, in the state of Oregon, if you collect rainwater, you're going to jail. Yes, I have talked to the 2 men who went to jail when they did a couple years ago. I'm the one who killed Kulingaski's water bill. Then they put it administratively, because they couldn't pass it as what they call a law, because they can't do it. They can't do it, and that's why the bill was killed, and that's why they put it administratively, because it takes away constitutional rights for anybody, including legal immigration. So in other words, you're saying that you have to pay the privilege to life, and that's where they come with this tax, on breathing air, the air tax. Oh, we need a carbon tax. Folks, you exhale and inhale carbon. They want to charge you for your life to breathe. That's like Nestle telling the world that you have to pay the privilege of water. You don't have a right to have water, period. And you got public employees, and you got lobbyists up at the Oregon State Capitol and each of the other 47 states, that are lobbying to take away your rights to life. And it's a fact, because that's the way they're getting away with this population control and stuff. And they're doing it deliberately against you. And so once you start standing up to this, and we start uniting, and you start reading these things, and you start comprehending these, and you start filing and owning your child, I think we have a template up to own your vehicle, your covered wagon. I don't like to use the word vehicle, even though that it is a neutral language that some people have fought and said, but to me, I like covered wagon because the covered wagon was the first structure that came across our country, and horsepower is known in your engine. So you have a covered wagon with 200 horses or whatever pulling the covered wagon. So that is the one thing that you have to realize is learning the word terminology. And covered wagon was actually in the first New York case for the right to travel case, and that's exactly what it said with the covered wagon, so people had the right to travel. So it is very important to read some of these court cases and see what's really going on, seeing how it is developed. And so that is the main point. And working together, passing this information like we're passing through the internet, passing through on Facebook. And I know that people are going off on Facebook. But like I said, I thank, Zimmerman for Facebook. Because without Facebook, we wouldn't have the knowledge we have today. But see, the main thing is on Facebook, you have to file your rates. We do that. It's all over. Everything that I go on, I always file my letter on it. Everything. Because everything, I have to protect myself each and every step of the way. I can't just assume, because we all know what the word assume means. So being a responsible adult, you don't assume, you instrument and confirm your rights. So that's the one thing that people's got to realize, that you have to confirm your rights. So, and this is the one thing that is a structure that is to protect you and your children. And you have to protect your children. The state ain't going to protect your children. Come on, we've already been witnessing that for years. We watch them continually kidnap and hold children responsible, for being alive, so they can make a living off of it. And so this is the structure that we are going through. And the FDIC, if people don't realize that, I put that court case up. Hopefully, if we haven't got it on the Facebook site, we'll get that again. And once we get that again out there, you will comprehend that the rights are even further there. And that's the one thing that you have to realize, that your rights are there. And if you don't sit there and start comprehending what a right and a privilege is, standing up for your rights. So you have to stand up for your rights. You don't sit there and act for a privilege. And when you act for a privilege, you give your rights up. I mean, that's the one thing I've been watching these other talk shows. I've been on a few the last week, trying to get more and more to comprehend these things, especially the flag issue. If you're flying the flag, what are you flying? Are you flying the peace flag or the war flag? And you fly that war flag, you're telling the cops that you want war. You're telling the public employees that you're in for war. That's what it means. Remember, that war flag was fought and flown on the battle dealing with Custard. No, Little Bighorn, come on. I mean, don't people really look at history? And remember, most of those people that were involved with Little Bighorn were foreigners. They came here, decided to go in the military, they get 3 squares, they get free ammunition. That's the reality of the world here, folks. And it still goes on with the military today. The saddest thing that drives me nuts with the military, because they're broken military code, and that happened with Obama, the terrorist, that they're allowing foreigners, Muslims, join. Prior to that, Muslims were not in the military, because they know that if there was a few that slipped into it, they kept their mouths shut, because they know if they went public or spoke out, things happened. And so we don't want these foreigners in our military. Even though that they can come in their military, do 4 years, and they get citizenship that way. Now, I have a little bit of a problem with that one myself because I have a conflict of interest with that. And the reason why I'm bringing up a conflict of interest because you want every time you go to court with your public pretender, the district attorney, the county clerk, the court clerk, you want a conflict of interest statement from them. See, I mean, if you're just getting run around because the circumstances of a statute code of administrative rule, say, that's knowing the separation of church and state, or what we call the Constitution versus statute code and administrative rule, or religious Bible's beliefs. Because the Bible doesn't give you rights. The Constitution gives you rights. And I do know how people have conflicted the Constitution with religion. I mean, natives didn't have the religion until it was forced down their throat. They didn't believe in that structure. You know, and I mean, I'm still waiting for some proof dealing with the Cherokee Nations to prove that goes back, because they said that some were worshiping that book going back to, what would they call that? George Washington. I want proof. I want evidence. I want facts. I don't believe in hearsay. Hearsay, you know, they do hearsay when you go to court. And when you go to court, too, these administrative courts, Article 1 courts, remember, every time a judge or that public pretender or the district attorney speaks, you object. If you don't object each and every time, that's how they bring you in. If the judge gets up and leaves that bench, that means he's leaving that bench and going out of that room. When he comes back in, he changes hats. Because remember, the court systems, they got many different courts in that court system. Many, many courts. I think basically there's 13 structures of the court system. So you want to make sure that you know when you go into these things what you are doing. You know, I've been there until I learned a lot of hard knocks. Till I started really reading and buckling down and started going, you know, because I mean, I was like a lot of people, you know, even though I knew a lot of the stuff, I was just doing it, but I didn't start applying it. And I was just getting beat up all around like everybody else does. Then I started applying it, you know. I got my property, you know, all certified out there. I've got my property heavily posted, you know, public employees. And if you don't know it, go on the front page of new.org and trackers. You can see what we post up. A lot of people do have a lot of other ones up, and we'll get some other people's stuff up there on the way they've done their posters. But I like mine, and then I got, you know, and I've got another guy that over in Eastern Oregon, he's got a 4 by 8 foot sign that says trespassers will be shot, buried, and buried again. And then he's got his thing of no trespassing and all that on his property, on his soil. And see, that's the one thing. I don't have a problem with that one. You know, because you have the right to defend your family. It's like I brought up, I believe last week, and if I didn't, is like this last week or the week prior, a gentleman shot 2 cops because they were trying to kidnap his child, you know, for the state corporation. So he shot both of the cops, and the district attorney of that county said, oh, they're not prosecuting at all. At all, they're not prosecuting. Because he had the right to defend his child. And that's exactly what they stated. And so, you know, the Democrats are out there yelling and screaming like holy hell. And that is the one thing, you know, let them scream. You know, Democrats don't have rights. You know, we're not living by your beliefs. You know, sad enough, we got people that come into this country and do this stuff to ourselves all the time. You know, so it's like it is very interesting. And one thing I have noticed tonight, I've noticed on YouTube, we've got 4 other people that started doing their talk shows on Saturday. And I find that interesting because they've never done their talk shows on Saturday. So, I mean, it just shows you what we are succeeding on, because we've got people that are starting to challenge us. That's why we moved to Saturday and Sunday, because we had everybody going to our Monday night, literally. And so we see what's going on. I see what's going on. I see the bullshit that these people are paying and portraying. And that's the one thing you got to remember, that people are self-centered, greedy people. They don't care about you or me. They care about themselves. They care about what they're able to produce or bring in and do what they want to do. And that is the saddest part, because these people, and some of these people, I've been on their talk shows for a long time, and they're doing this. So it's like, okay, so, you know, I go on and I've got my own direction of things I'm stating now. And a lot of these people are the ones who run with our personal information that we've written, put out there. And so I'm going and not going to be doing that to so many people here in the future, giving them all the stuff so that way they're bringing it up like their information. I mean, I don't have a problem with people doing that per se, but at least tell people the truth. So that is the one thing. If you tell people the truth, it does work when you tell people the truth. But most people don't want the truth. They can't handle the truth. They can't live the truth. So, and when people go through this process, it is frustrating. It is frustrating that these things do happen. And so, and I don't mind if they want to do it on, you know, all right, but at least, you know, if we do it, you know, before ours or after ours, and we can combine and work together on these issues. But when you are doing it at the same time, that's a little frustrating to me. So I just had to publicly bring that one out. It is just a frustration there. But, you know, the thing is about life is a learning experience. How do we want to learn? Everybody, so many people are out for personal gain. It's all about me, all about me. So anyhow, we're going to be working, changing some of that. The one thing I'm going to be putting up together here pretty soon is a protesting package. I've decided I'm going to start putting some things together so that way people do it, and we will copyright it. And I guarantee you we'll be copywriting that one, because that is going to be my own work going out and setting up protesters so that way if they do the stuff legally, they have protection. And so that is the one thing, is educating these men and women so they get to know what the rights are, lawful and legal protesters. And so the forms will have it set up for both lawful and legal, because that way they'll be protected and our country will be protected, and not only that, the administration will be protected from foreigners. And that's what we want. We want our public servants and the stuff protected. We don't want people out there being radical. That's why I recommended a traveler's card, not an ID card, because ID is you're presenting an ID that you're state registered of the corporation, and here's my state ID. Here's the permission I have. See, that's the one thing that people don't get. They're going and asking permission. And you're not there to ask permission from your employers, employees. Employers, that's us. Collectively, we the people. We have public employees, and that's what the law says. And we do have those laws up on new.org and trackers. And so it is reading this stuff and participating and standing up with your friends and neighbors and doing this, participating. So you have to participate in this stuff. Because if you don't participate, what's the point? You know, I mean, I got people that tell me, Ed, why do we continue doing this stuff? We're just losing this. We're not losing. We're gaining ground. Haven't you been paying attention to the convictions that are going on right now today? I mean, how many public employees have been imprisoned? Aren't you paying attention to what's going on with that? You know, that's the one thing that people are not paying attention to what's really going on. Everybody wants to whine. You know, I mean, I get a lot of people that I deal with weekly on what goes on off of Facebook, and people call me all the time. And I'm trying to get people more and more to work together. You know, and everybody wants to be the king of their own structure. And that is the one thing that is not being the key of your structure. It's our structure. It's about all of us. And once we realize it's about all of us, because that's why it's called We the People. And so when we go back in history on this stuff, even immigration law was put together in 1770. 1774 was immigration law put together. And so once you comprehend that there is a privilege and a right, that's how we win. See? We don't give up our rights. And you don't give up your privilege either. And the one thing, too, is for those men and women who have been accused of felonies, you can go back and get your arm rights. 30 days after you're released from jail, it doesn't matter if you're on probation, read the law. You know, I mean, some people have been put in prison and they got felonies even for 3 or 4 driving without a license, and it's a felony? You know, if you didn't harm anybody, what's the argument here? So that's the one thing that people's got to realize on the arguments that people are claiming. Because, see, they claim this bizarre, ridiculous stuff they do all the time, what goes on. And so when they do this stuff, it's very frustrating to the rest of us because they get us involved. They bring us down. So, and that's the one thing that, you know, I'm dealing with this for a group. I've been asked probably to go speak to a group. But I'm not going to go there and go through emotions. And I've already talked to a couple people in it, and it's like, no, I want your questions. I don't want your stories. Your stories are all the same. How the kid was taken, they're all the same. How they were abused, they're all the same. Yes, there's different cases of abuse and the traumatic experiences that happened at the time. But technically, they're all the same. So getting the solution out is what we need to be working on. That's why right now, if you've got ideas, write them up and serve your congressman and senator. Don't let them take credit for your work either, unless you want them to, unless they've got the bill and they're going to follow through with it. But I don't believe in giving somebody the credit for my work, to tell you the truth. I don't give a damn if I get paid for it or not. But I at least still would like to have the respect involved of it, if that makes logical sense. Any man, woman would like that, including a child when they do work. I mean, I've run across some very intelligent children that have actually surprised me at how much they even know about the Constitution or their statute codes and administrative rules of their county and city. And there are kids out there who are paying attention. So how do you plan on protecting your children? They're learning how to protect their children. So, I mean, it is not just an isolated case. People are waking up to what's going on. And so that is the beauty of this stuff, when the kids are waking up. I mean, that's the one thing that is blessed because of the internet right now. And a lot of kids are doing homeschool. You got states right now that are fighting against homeschool. I don't know if we got the template up for homeschool yet or not, because I know I wrote one a year ago. But you can homeschool your kids by law. And you'll have the principal, you'll have the DHS coming up and trying to tell you that you're harming your child because they're not being in the general population to get to know how to deal with other kids. It's like England passed a rule 2 years ago that they rescinded, I believe. But it was like kids growing up in elementary school, grammar school, middle school, could not have friends because of the emotional trauma of losing a friendship. How else did we learn when we were growing up? How well did we learn these things when we were growing? They need that stuff. You need to go through these things to know what the emotions are, what the feelings are, what the circumstances are of these things. I mean, this is the one point that these Democrats have been destroying. Oh, we got to have feelers out there. You don't do your emotions. You put them over here in a corner, and we call them feelers. So that way you don't deal with reality. And that's why a lot of kids don't deal with reality. They've been taught to, deal with a fiction of their own mind, make a fantasy of their own mind of what's going on. And that's what the reality is what is really happening with a lot of children today in the system, in our circumstances. It is a reality that is truly happening. That's why these kids don't get what's going on. That's why they're not prepared what's going on in the world, of what's going on with their neighborhood and what's going on with them themselves. And so we can always work on these things, work together on these things, educate them. I mean, I know beside myself, there's a lot of other men and women that we know that even join this show that educate others on this stuff. And that's the whole point, because our school systems are a failure. Our public employees are a failure. And not all of them, because we do have some honorable elected and public servants. I do give those men and women credit, the ones that are honorable. But you got to remember, they're caught in a catch-22, because unless you're protecting them, how can they be honorable? See, that's the one thing that people have got to comprehend, that, they're protecting you. You have to protect them, the honorable elected and public servants. And we do have honorable elected and public servants. I know that personally. I've dealt with them. I've talked to them. And, that's what some of the changes are. Now, the thing is that December 15th is the cutoff day to put a bill in the Oregon State House and Senate. So if you have an idea, a suggestion, get it to your senator and your House of Representatives immediately. But when you do put that in, stress in your instrument that it's an administrative rule. And so you have to stress that, write it in it. Because they know it, you know it, but if somebody else reads what you're putting in or what you're getting out there, maybe they don't know it. So it's your responsibility to clarify these things. I learned that a long time ago because I used to do it like everybody else, throw it in, do this, do that. And then now I'm going on, the deal is now you have to clarify. You have to write it and make sure people comprehend it. And that's what the whole thing is about. We have to comprehend these things when we put it in. We have to write it out. We have to state it. It's our responsibility to clarify these things. So that way the children get to know what they're reading. The children comprehend what they're getting. See, if we're supposed to educate our children, we're not supposed to leave their mind to go wander like we've been taught by the Democrats and some Republicans too. We're not supposed to have the mindset to just go wander. That's when that goes when you're playing and stuff. When you're educating, your mind has to be fresh, clear, and decisively know the actions of what the facts are. And that's the whole point, knowing what the facts are. So, but anyhow, I'm going to be working on some interesting stuff tomorrow night because I still got a couple other things I got to try to confirm tonight on the Sixth Amendment, because there's a couple conflicting things on the Sixth Amendment, and I want to make sure it's a fact before I go shouting those things out, because I sure don't want to basically embarrass myself. We do have one video that we will play. I will be getting into the cipher of that video. Some of these videos out there, like public broadcasting and all these things, remember, they have the Democratic twist in it. Oh, you have constitutional rights. You're not supposed to be arrested and kidnapped and held for ransom, but they have a right to arrest you. No, they don't. See, this is the one thing that sort of shocks me, how people go through this and think that these people have a right just to arrest us, kidnap us, and held us for ransom. See, technically, when you get arrested and booked and all that, by law, they're not supposed to take your fingerprints or a photograph of you. They're not technically supposed to arrest you. They're supposed to serve you a summons to go to court. Then if you don't show up to court, they can come after you if it's an injured man, woman, or child, or property damage case. They cannot just come and arrest you because, we have to make money for the private corporation jail. And that's exactly what they're doing, is doing it under the private corporation jail. So with that, we'll open up the floor and see if anybody's got any questions for tonight. And then tomorrow night, we're going to get into the Sixth Amendment. And we're going to have a lot of fun coming up on the other amendments, because I've been turning up some interesting information on that.
All participants are unmuted.
Floor is open.
Yeah, Ed.
Yeah.
Earlier you said something about prosecutor or any other attorney or judge. You said to object every time they speak. When you do object to what they're saying, how should you respond usually to what they're saying?
Right, but you want to object to what they're saying because you want to assert your authority over them. Am I missing something here?
I'm just trying to figure out, okay, attorney starts talking and you say, I object. What do you mean, assert your authority over them?
You're objecting to their statements. You're objecting to what they're trying to attempt to put what they call on record.
Basically all their hearsay?
Right, and you want to make sure, and I know for a fact you have the hearsay laws on that one. And so, and then you're going to say object because of this court case or that, and you could just bring that in, or just make sure that you file it. And when you object, and if you have those copies with you, you make sure that the sheriff's deputy walks it over to the clerk, you get it stamped, certified, and passed back to you.
Okay.
That's one way to control the court. And there are men and women out there who are actually doing that, and I've been watching some of the videos where people are doing it, and, basically the judges are telling them to get out of the courtroom. So, in other words, their case dismissed. Because the only one that can make a record, an artificial man, woman, or that's a judge, district attorney, prosecutor, whatever you want to call them, clerk, cannot put stuff in file. I mean, the only one that could write an affidavit and have anything charged is a lawful bloodline Native American beside immigrant, and it has to be autographed or signed for them. And so you want to make sure that that gets on record. Because if it ever goes into the Court of Appeals, it's on the Court of Appeals. So it stops it right there. See, that's what you're doing, is you're preventing it and stopping it immediately. And that's what you want to do. Your job is to stop them in their tracks, if that makes sense. Do you see where I'm coming from with that one?
Yes, I see where you're coming from. Also, couldn't you also get a case dismissed immediately by challenging jurisdiction?
Yeah, you can insert your right to have it dismissed because of challenging the jurisdiction. But see, the one thing is that I strongly recommend people file this before they get to court. Because I watch videotape and I get responses from people all the time. They go, I told the judge this and I told the judge that. And I said, did you put it in record? Did you file it? Did you have it done before you got to court? Well, that doesn't matter. The judge is supposed to do it. And it's like, it does matter, because when you do it that way, you're putting hearsay evidence on record. They don't have to accept it. And that's a fact. They don't have to accept it. It's hearsay evidence. It's not admissible in court. And if it goes to Court of Appeals, it cannot even be admissible in the Court of Appeals on that. Because that's how the Court of Appeals is able to throw out the cases. And people don't get that one. Because you're going by the record, and sometimes there might be a respectable judge that will go along with, what you're doing and make a decision, but those cases are rare when it really comes down to it. So you want to have it always in writing, because the pen, when it comes down to that situation, is mightier than the sword.
So
and
basically, you're saying,
go ahead.
So basically, what you're saying is to be extremely detailed in your affidavit and in your instrument. Right.
Yeah, you want to make sure it's explained and detailed. Because in that way, there's no conflict of interest for you or them. You can see that one, can't you?
Yes, Ed.
So, and that's the whole point that's the way you need to protect your children and stuff. It's like your kid. He's getting interested. He's starting putting some of this stuff together. He's brought up some interesting things to you, and you're realizing that the kid is starting to pay attention and getting this stuff, right?
Yes.
So that's the point. And that means that you are a respectful and honorable father, because you are educating your bloodline. So, that's kudos to you. And too bad a lot of others don't get that one. So, and that's the dilemma that we are placed across the country on these things. We've got the solutions in our hands. And the public employees, and that's the other point that I'll be working on. And I already got that one written up on the rights to travel that I'll be serving in the Oregon State. So that way, if a cop does do that, he loses his job. See, we've got to make sure that these administrative rules have penalties. Right now, the administrative rules technically have no penalties, even though they claim they do. But what do? They go to a hearing or get on administrative leave. We don't want administrative leave. We want indictments. We want these people prisoned. If a cop falsely arrests you and assaults you, he should go to jail. That one cop who beat that 13-year-old boy up and broke his nose and his leg apparently is being charged for assault and battery and attempted murder. That's what we want. There's another case that I was informed that is being charged that way, similar to that the district attorney is actually charging the cop on it. Because there was an outroar by the family, and they were trying to hush it up before it got to the media, so they decided to charge the cops, so that went to the media instead of what the people were going to do. So people are waking up. This is the one thing. We are waking up across the country on it. And that is the whole point. We have to protect ourselves and our friends and neighbors. And too bad most neighbors don't protect their neighbors today. That is a sad spot we are living in today, because most people are not protecting their neighbors, not protecting their bloodline. but they're slowly getting it. I mean, you know, that's the one thing we are making headway. People are, it's working. You know, but we were trying to do it, and then, you know, sometimes it's taking longer, realistically, than it should. Because I figure a lot of this stuff should be hammered out immediately out there. You know, people need to be standing up faster than what they are standing up because it's trickling. And I agree with a couple of other gentlemen that I've talked to on this issue, and it's like, when are we going to see this? When are we going to see that? How come it's taking too long? You know, because all of us have been doing it for 30 years. But people are finally grasping to it. And it's taken that long for people to start grafting to it. You know, and it's sad that it's taken this long for these things to happen. And so, and that's the one thing that most of these other talk shows, they get into stuff. I mean, I talked, you know, even Kurt's Law Corner. I've got to go back and listen to a couple other ones on that one too. But I've been listening to some of that stuff, and it's interesting because they're you know, oh, you need to do attorneys. You need to go this route. I keep talking to people that need to do attorneys, and it's like, okay, well, if you got an attorney, don't forget to have him file your affidavit. You have to make that attorney do his job, read the law, the bar structure. Make sure you get his oath of servitude. Make sure you get his bond information, his insurance policy. So that's what we need to do on these things, is make sure that we are getting this stuff. It's our responsibility to get this stuff and make it happen. Because, I mean, all this stuff where people go, well, I'm waiting this, or I'll pray. Well, how many people have prayed and their children are still not home? And that's the one thing that you've got to stop doing that and start writing the charges. Start speaking up. Stop listening to these public servants. Because the public servants are out there saving their job. They don't care about you. You know, you got to realize this. So, and once you start putting that together, you know, all the other stuff comes together. It starts falling into place. You know, it's like with mortgages, trying to get people, you know, to comprehend with mortgages that you have to file this paperwork. You have to go through the process. And then once you get it filed, start pestering your local media about it. Bring it out. You know, I do support lawful bloodline natives getting it. I do not expect immigrants to get a free parcel and free assistance in our country. We don't, and we will not get it in their country of their home of their origin, native origin. So why are they coming to our country and getting above and beyond what's going on with the lawful native or even the legal immigrants that have been here for the last couple generations? That's not right. That's not respecting when they came to this country what their belief was to pass down the freedom for their bloodline. So we're not giving them the respect and honor by doing that. See, that's the one thing that is so frustrating. You know, everybody says, oh, we're supposed to be equal to everybody. Everything's supposed to be equal. No, it is not designed that way. The United States of America, the 48 states, is not open to the world. And it's technically never been open to the world. Everybody came here and invaded this country. They beached their boats and decided to make a claim. That's like me coming into your home, sitting in your chair, taking your remote from you, and saying, you do what I tell you now. I run your home. I want your bank accounts. I want whatever I want in your home. And that's what's going on with these immigrants today. You know, Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Devins, Dunes, all these guys are doing this stuff. You know, Dunes is from Mexico. How the hell is he a federal congressman? What the hell? He's not supposed to be in office. You have to be born on this soil. It says it in the Constitution in every state. That's like Kate Brown. She was born in Spain. She wasn't born on this soil. You know, and people say, well, you know, I mean, I haven't seen proof that her parents were in the Air Force. I've requested the proof. I've done for Freedom of Information Act, even including the sheriffs, and everybody's avoiding that. So now I'm putting out the one to the county commissioners, and when I do that, I'm putting the indictment one out with that one to the county commissioners. And I'm putting that with the indictment, with all the sheriffs and all the other ones I did when I sent it out to the county commissioners, going out to the media, it's going to the White House, going to Congress. You know, it's going to the Freedom of Information Act federally, and to say, hey, you know, we have a federal law that says they're supposed to do this and provide this, and they're not providing it. Who's supposed to enforce the law? And that's the other point. You know, getting our public servants to enforce the administrative codes that are there in the Constitution there. That's our responsibility. I mean, I've watched public meetings across the country. I get these emails and things sent to me about, you know, with other men and women that are going to public meetings and speaking out. And, you know, these county commissioners and these city councilmen are showing no respect because they think that they're gods and they're supposed to run the city. You know, they're supposed to run the city for the city personnel as well as the owners of that city, and that's the lawful bloodline natives that live there. They're supposed to work with the immigrants. I mean, I've watched immigrants here in Lincoln County come in on bus loads, dropped off downtown. Mexicans just being dropped off downtown on bus loads. And then they're getting hotels, they're getting food stamps, they're getting housing. But a veteran, he ain't getting a damn thing. I think there's something wrong with that. Oh, by the way, hot flash, the Supreme Court said under the First Amendment right, people who are feeding the homeless, it's a First Amendment right. It's freedom of speech. That just came out of the Supreme Court this last week. So the Supreme Court is starting to stand up. They're starting to change things. Things are moving back compared to what it was that you get arrested, kidnapped, and held for ransom for giving somebody free food. Because they're trying to make it so that way you can't provide water, food, air to anybody. And once people start realizing that that's the goal, you know, to make it illegal for you to eat, making it a crime for you to breathe, making it a crime for you to drink water, collect rainwater. I mean, we've got it on record from the city of Toledo, where the former city attorney, and the city manager admitted, hey, you go to the creek beds and the rivers and pump out water for your personal use only. You cannot sell it. Period. You cannot go out and sell it because that stuff is for personal use only. And we've got them on record admitting this stuff for personal use only. But it's getting for the House and Senate, you know, it's like I had one of the former city managers before they literally ran from the city and I think they moved out of the state. They were talking about going to another country because of what transpired after they admitted to a few things. But, you know, I was waiting to be kidnapped and held for ransom on that one again. But this was 5 years ago, and people are waking up, you know, but it is the way we've been wrongfully educated. It is the way we've been wrongfully indoctrinized, and the way we've been wrongfully taught in religion. You know, I'm not against people having their religious beliefs at all, because that's their religion belief, because the Constitution says you have an equal right. That's like a woman has a right to an abortion. It's her body. It's not the Bible. It is not another man, woman, or even a child that's been indoctrinized to think, like Chelsea. Okay? It's not their right. It's your body. It's your right. It's your circumstances, because you have to live with that the rest of your life. And you think that sometimes women don't live with the trauma of having an abortion? If you are that mentally retarded, you are scary. Because women do live with that the rest of their life, but they realize that the decisions that they had to make and the compromisations that they had to make for that decision. See, people don't think about how somebody else thinks, how somebody else feels. You know, they don't have compassion when it comes to that. It's always about me, and I. So, and that's what I said, you know, and everybody's going, well, they're going out and this new judge that's going to be appointed to the Supreme Court, I think it was, oh, he's going to change Roe versus Wade. He can't. Because the Constitution publicly was stated that a woman has a right to her body, just like a man does. And for those of religious belief that have been taught by the Bible that the man owns the woman and the woman shall do what the man say, hey, that's supposed to be an equal relationship. That's why you're supposed to be working with the woman on the home and, you know, on your property and all the stuff. And it's a shame that women today are not brought up that way. I mean, it's sad that women today are not brought up that way. You know, working with men, you know, and it's all about whatever they can get. Oh, I want to get a divorce because I can get a divorce. I get half of whatever he gets. Women get involved in relationships so they can go after to take a man's assets. And that's the other sad point that we live today. And I know that. That's a sad point we live today, and I watch that stuff. You know, I mean, I've literally watched that stuff happen around me, and so, and I mean, I've even had a couple women in my past that were trying to set it up so they could take what I had. And that's the way they were brought up to believe. But it doesn't work that way in reality. But that's up to man to teach these women. And that is up to the other women to teach the women the truth. See, men and women actually have to work together. Oh, that's a thought. You know, it's not about one or the other superior. And once we realize that one another is not superior and we are equal, because the Constitution gives you equal rights, 100% equal. Man and woman are equal. Man is not above woman, and woman is not above man, unless you're in England. That's why we don't live in England. You know, so I mean, I sure the hell don't want to live in England. I don't want the British administrative rules. I couldn't handle it. I would not tolerate it. And so that's the point that we need to start standing up, working together, and making sure our children are educated. So with that, anybody else got anything to say? Because I was going on a rampage there, apparently. Anybody? Okay. Well, anyhow, we're not going to have any speak. Now, tomorrow night, we're going to get into the 6th Amendment. Then the following week, we'll be doing the 7th Amendment. I do have a video taped tomorrow that the producer will do. And then on the 7th Amendment, I've got 2 that I'm going to produce. Because the 6th Amendment is basically the same deal with the 7th Amendment. I mean, the 5th Amendment, I mean. So it is combining and comprehending the deal. And then also, too, the 5th, 6th go back to the 2nd Amendment and the 1st, because the 2nd Amendment gives you the right to protect your rights. And that's the one thing, like in the state of Oregon right now, they're putting people on a list. People are getting letters in the state of Oregon to turn your arms over. You know, they're asking men and women to turn their arms over. Come on, people, wake up. You know, file the letter against the governor on your rights when it comes to that one. You know, I got a new one. Once I get these other 2 letters out, I got a new one I'll be filing on Kate Brown, and I'll have that one done before the election. Because I had somebody request that from Washington. And that's the one thing on these affidavits that I put up. You can autograph those things and send them in to Jeff Sessions. Because so long as so many people start doing that, there's more than one witness to the crime, the state attorney general has to act on it. That is the one thing people don't realize, the state attorney general's position, what they have to do. And once we start realizing that these public servants have to do this stuff, and they know it. I mean, that's why Jeff Sessions is doing, he's got a lot of conflict of things that are going against him right now. And, I mean, I don't support the man in a lot of things. I'll tell you that right now. I'm very vocal on that one. But the other point is that we want to make sure he does his employment of servitude. And he knows that, just like people don't get what Donald Trump came out. What did Donald Trump come out and say? Oh, that's right. I'm the president of a corporation, not of the sovereign Americans. He stated it, folks. So listen to what's being stated. And they keep going after Donald Trump about, oh, he's got all these children that he's shipping out and doing all this stuff. Remember, your congressman wrote those administrative rules. So your congressmen are the responsible parties. Quit blaming the president. He can only do so much. He can do an executive order, but he doesn't have the authority to control the House and Senate. And I don't know where people come up with this structure where they think that, you know, he's got this magic pen that can waive all this stuff. It doesn't work that way. Our system was put up so that way it protects us. That's like a video that we got on the YouTube channel on new.org and trackers versus democracy versus, the republic. Democracy says you can hang the man and kill the man. The republic says, oh, you can't do that. You at least have to afford him a reasonable and rational trial. And remember, the thing of that comes down to the law, because that protects us, so we're not going back to the Christian Crusade Foundation. And see, that's the one thing. Do your history on Christian Crusades and Muslims. They were all one and the same until they separated. That's all real history. So learn real history of the circumstances of Jerusalem. That's why I don't believe we should be funding Jerusalem at all. Period. I don't believe them. I don't believe in the book that was written. Because, everybody knows my opinion. Anyhow, with that, if nobody has anything else to say, I guess we're going to wrap it up for tonight. I'll give anybody else one chance. Okay, with that, we'll say you have a blissful evening. We'll see you tomorrow night. May the Great Spirit bless you. That's the one thing that may the Great Spirit bless you. May the Mother Earth and Mother feed you, clothe you, look over your health, and may the Creator continually protect us all. So anyhow, you all have a good evening. See you tomorrow.